What's going on, guys? It's Analyst, and we're back for week 9. So, last week I got a little busy during the week. I had to start my video on the Saturday, so I ended up missing the Thursday night review. But thank God for that, because that was kind of a mess last week with Carolina, Atlanta. A lot of people had a lot higher expectations. So, hopefully, I was going to say hopefully this game is a little better, but, because of COVID, I'm not going to have any running backs from Green Bay and no wide receivers from San Francisco. So we'll see how this one piles together. As usual, I'm going to go over the spreads, the totals. I can give you guys my game pick at the end. And so let's just jump into this. I'll talk about the fantasy relevant players and who I want to start, sit, and some DraftKings. I'll throw in some DraftKings stuff as well. So if you guys are enjoying these videos, subscribe, hit the like button. It really helps me out. I'm trying to build my content on YouTube, and hopefully, we can keep this thing going all year round and have some cool things to do in the off season as well. So if you guys enjoy this, consider subscribing, liking, all the above. But let's jump into this. So we're going to start off with this San Francisco hosting Green Bay tonight. I'm recording this. You can probably see the time on the bottom right. But I'm recording this about 3 o'clock on Thursday. So the game's going to be on in about 4 or 5 hours. For San Francisco, they're without Jimmy Garoppolo. They're without George Kittle. They're also without Brandon Ayuk. And also without Deebo Samuel. Also without Kendrick Bourne. And I think that's it. So, San Francisco is missing about their best offensive players. Nick Mullins, I think, is a serviceable backup. Jimmy Garoppolo, with his ankle injury, he's more of a game manager. Even without the ankle injury, Jimmy Garoppolo isn't anything special. So, Nick Mullins in there won't make too much of a difference. But what it does tell me is that San Francisco is going to rely more on their run game. And considering how good their run game is, no matter who's in that backfield, that's the direction they'll go. So the San Francisco running backs right now, it's really just Jerick McKinnon and JaMycal Hasty. Raheem Mostert still on IR. Tevin Coleman came back off IR, got hurt again, so he's out now. And Jeff Wilson, I believe, is also still on IR. So they're rolling with Jerick McKinnon. They're also rolling with JaMycal Hasty. And Hasty got, I think he had 12 carries last week. He got like 29, 30 yards from it. Didn't do anything special. He did get a touchdown, though. So I expect Hasty to get more of a workload in this game. They're going to have to rely on him. Jerick McKinnon, when they're down, even though he's got tired legs, they don't really have much of a choice to throw him out there. I'm sure he'll line up as a receiver. He'll get some targets. So Jerick McKinnon and JaMycal Hasty are both very, very startable for me this week. JaMycal Hasty especially because he's going up against that Green Bay defense. We just saw them get shredded by Dalvin Cook. I believe Green Bay is ranked 32nd in the league in terms of defending the run or allowing points to running backs. So, yeah, it's a great matchup for JaMycal Hasty. He doesn't have much competition other than Jerick McKinnon. And Jerick McKinnon, if you're in a PPR league, I think he could be fine in this matchup as well. So, I like Jerick McKinnon. I like JaMycal Hasty. I'm starting both those guys. As far as wide receivers, I mentioned they were without Ayuk, without Deebo Samuel, and without Kendrick Bourne, all thanks to COVID, which, by the way, has come up that it was a false positive, or a false negative, or no, false positive. It was a false positive, so Bourne doesn't actually have COVID, but because of protocols, he's still going to miss this game, and so is Ayuk. So, that being said, it really leaves Kevin White, which, if you guys remember the Bears, a couple years ago, they drafted Kevin White in the first round. He never really panned out, dealt with a ton of injuries. So he's there. He'll probably be their primary outside receiver. And then you have Trent Taylor in the slot. So, pick whoever you want. They're probably going to run a bunch of 2 running back sets, a bunch of 2 tight end sets. It's probably not going to be much focus on the wide receivers at all. If I'm picking one of those 2, it's probably Trent Taylor. But, Kevin White, if maybe he shows some of that first round upside, he could do something. If you're playing DraftKings, I'm pretty sure Kevin White is like 200 or something like that. So definitely something you can take advantage of. But in a regular If you're in a tight spot, I would consider starting Trent Taylor. But if you're not in a tight spot, I really wouldn't consider either of these guys. Jordan Reed, he is supposed to be coming off injured reserve. I still don't even know if they've officially taken him off IR. If they have, then I would start Jordan Reed. I mean, with George Kittle out, they don't really have too many other options. So they're expected to activate Jordan Reed today after he practiced. So Jordan Reed, I'm gonna start him. It's just they don't really have any other option. He's gonna get a ton of targets. I made a huge post not too long ago talking about the tight ends in San Francisco in the absence of George Kittle, and they still average like 13.9 points per game, almost 8 targets per game. So the tight end position, especially when they're missing all their wide receivers, is going to be very much used tonight. Game script, as you can see, Packers are 7-point favorites. Game script may not be in the San Francisco favor, so they're going to need to throw it. They're probably going to run it a lot early, but at the second half of the game, they're going to likely need to throw it. Regardless, Jordan Reed I like. If Jordan Reed is out, Ross Dwelley will be a great start. I'm a huge fan of Ross Dwelley if Jordan Reed is out. If Jordan Reed is in, it makes him a lot less appealing, but nonetheless, it's an option. So just keep that in mind. As far as the Packers go, like I mentioned, all the running backs are gone. So Aaron Rodgers is someone I definitely look to start. I don't really think they're going to have much on the ground at all to rely on. Jamal Williams, A.J. Dillon, and Aaron Jones are all expected to miss this game. A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams have already been ruled out, while Aaron Jones, he's questionable, but it's expected he's going to miss this week and be back for the following week. So, yeah, not starting. So who does that leave in terms of this running back room? It's Dexter Williams, and it leaves Tyler Ervin. So Tyler Ervin has gotten at least one reception in every single game for the Packers this year, and Dexter Williams hasn't played a game at all. So if I'm picking one of these running backs, it's going to be Tyler Ervin, and that's going to be in a PPR setting. I think Tyler Ervin could end up getting 3, 4, or 5, maybe even 6 catches this game. He's got a $200 price on DraftKings if you're doing the showdown, so great value there. Don't really have any faith in Dexter Williams. San Francisco defense has not been all that kind to running backs, so I'm definitely leaning more towards Tyler Ervin in this matchup just because he might get that passing volume. But, I mean, outside of the running backs, which may not even be used all that much, Devontae Adams, he's been huge these last 2 weeks, and I think he's going to have to do it again tonight. He's going to be my captain on DraftKings. They just really don't have a choice but to run their offense through Devontae Adams. They didn't make a trade for Will Fuller like everybody thought they might. So, Devontae Adams, another great start for him, but that kind of goes without saying. You can't really trust any of these other Green Bay wide receivers. They just haven't really shown up. Allen Lazard, I don't know how far away he is from coming back, but whenever he does, then he might be worth a look. But other than that, Robert Tonyan, he came back into relevance last week. He had, I believe it was like 5, 6, 7 catches, and he put up over 12 points. So Robert Tonyan could get that extra volume. He can get those touchdowns. So if I'm considering another Green Bay player, it's probably going to be Tonyan. And that is going to be it for this Green Bay San Francisco game. I got a lot of questions about if I would start Tonyan or Reed. I'm going to pick Tonyan. And I'm going to pick Green Bay to win this. 7-point favorites. Houston, Jacksonville with a 50.5 total. Houston 7-point favorites going on the road into Jacksonville. So for Jacksonville, you got Jake Luton, I believe. He's a 6th-round rookie. He had to start. It was Oklahoma, Ohio. I don't even know what college he was coming out of, but apparently they're saying they want to open up their offense a little more with Jake Luton at QB, which, what does that say about Gardner Minshew now that Gardner Minshew is out? So Luton's probably a desperation streamer for me. I'm not sure what his price is on DraftKings, but if it's dirt cheap, if it's in the 4,000s or 5,000s, then he might be worth a look there. As far as the running backs go, James Robinson, this is the matchup of all matchups for him. Houston has a terrible run defense. and they're probably going to want to rely on Robinson more so than relying on their 6th-round rookie. So, great matchup for James Robinson. He's 7,000 on DraftKings, well worth that price. Wide receiver wise, DJ Chark coming off the bye, now fully healthy, and Chark's been getting a ton of targets. Just Minshew has not been able to give him any good targets, and Jake Luton. A lot of people expect him to help that, and I'm going to be on board with that. I think DJ Chark is a great start this week, and if Luton can be more accurate and he can funnel those targets to DJ Chark, then I think he could have a huge game. So a lot of Jacksonville players I like for DFS this week. Laviska Shenault, if you're in a really tight spot, I'm going to have to start him in one of my leagues, so I don't hate it. But like I said, we don't know what to expect from Luton. As far as the Houston side goes, Deshaun Watson, great start. David Johnson, he's getting like 70-80% of the 70-80% of the running back snaps ever since Bill O'Brien left. So he's a great start here against terrible Jacksonville defense. Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, both great starts. Darren Fells, Jordan Akins, haven't been able to trust either of those tight ends. So that's where I'm leaning with that. Not really looking to start Randall Cobb either. I know his projection is like over 10, but I'm still not starting him unless you're really desperate. So, I do think Houston wins this game, but I think Jacksonville covers the spread. I think Jacksonville will cover 7 points with Jake Luton, and it wouldn't surprise me if they outright won this game, because Houston is not a scary team. They have been in the past. They've run their division, but they're just not doing that this year. So. I think Houston still ends up winning it, but I think Jacksonville could cover that spread. We got Detroit and Minnesota. A lot of COVID implications for this game. Matt Stafford has been placed on the COVID list. Some people expect him to get off it, and apparently it was because of a close contact. So he didn't contract the disease, but he was in contact with someone who did. So there's a chance he is activated for the game before Sunday, but we'll have to keep an eye on that because obviously huge implications if Matt Stafford is to not play in this game. As for Minnesota, Kirk Cousins, not a big fan of. It's a good matchup, but last week we saw Dalvin Cook get like 30, 35 touches, and Kirk Cousins threw the ball 12 times. So it just goes to show that they're not afraid to run their offense that way. They're not afraid to give Cook the ball 35 times and just let Kirk take a back seat. So, yeah, and I mean, it helped them beat the Packers. So I would not be surprised to see them do that again with Dalvin Cook. I think he's like 8,000 on DraftKings, but he's well worth it. So I do love Dalvin Cook. I'm a little weary about Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Like I said, if Matt Stafford is out, and this becomes a blowout game for Minnesota, I'm probably going to avoid starting Justin Jefferson. And at the same time, Adam Thielen, he's going to have maybe 3 or 4 targets, depending on how much Kirk Cousins actually has to throw the ball. So I'm a little weary in that aspect. And then the tight ends, you just can't depend on. So keep an eye on the Matt Stafford situation. As far as the Lions go, with Stafford potentially... Okay, look, if Stafford plays, I think he's good value on GFS as well. But outside of that, DeAndre Swift, he played 60% of the snaps last week, which was huge. He didn't really get a ton of touches, but he played 60% of the snaps. He's trending in the right direction. Hopefully they'll get him more involved in the passing game, as we've seen. Maybe some extra runs on the ground. But, DeAndre Swift, now is a really good time to buy low. Yeah, and I think he's definitely startable in this matchup. Minnesota run defense hasn't been anything crazy. Kenny Galladay expected to miss this game and beyond, so that leaves Marvin Jones, who I'm not all that interested in. If you're in a desperate spot, he could be okay because the Minnesota defense is Swiss cheese, ironically enough, to the Packers, who we over here. But I'm not confident in Marvin Jones. Could be Quentin Cephas. It could be Marvin Hall, who had that big game. Could be Danny Amendola, for all we know. But who it really is going to be is TJ Hawkinson, who matters at quarterback. I mean, Hawkinson has been the ideal consistency at the tight end position this year. He's a top 4, top 5 tight end, and he's playing like it too. So he's doing better than Mark Andrews right now. Mark Andrews has had 2 or 3 big games, but and T.J. Hawkinson hasn't had that big game yet. But with Kenny Galladay out, the sky's the limit for T.J. Hawkinson. So I love T.J. Hawkinson this week. Not a huge fan of Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and depending on if Matt Stafford is healthy and on the field or not, I think Minnesota is going to take this game. Seattle Buffalo. Am I reading that right? Are Seattle 3-point favorites? Is that real? I'm sorry, but Josh Allen has looked awful lately. And he started off really hot. And Seattle defense is very, very, very bad. But Josh Allen has just looked awful. If he didn't play against the Patriots and the Jets in his last 2 matchups, he'd be 0-2 in the last 2 weeks. Any other teams, he'd be 0-2. If it was the Dolphins, if they played the Dolphins 2 weeks in a row, they'd be 0-2. Like, I don't have faith in Josh Allen. I don't have faith in this Buffalo defense. But regardless, Zach Moss, he took over in snaps last week. He got 2 touchdowns. He's easily the best running back in this backfield. So, and look, Seattle, I talked about, they're awful. So Josh Allen, as much as I have lost faith in him, he's still a great start this week, as well as Zach Moss, who, I mean, you got to keep rolling him out there. He's a fringe RB2/flex play on a weekly basis until proven otherwise. Devin Singletary is just really falling behind. Wide receiver wise, Stephon Diggs, top 3, top 4, top 5 wide receiver this week. He's, no matter the case, Diggs is getting a ton of targets. So he's definitely going to be great this week. Outside of that, John Brown, not completely healthy. He's got the sickle cell issue, so it kind of his recovery time is always a lot longer. I want to say take a shot on Gabriel Davis, but he's not getting the targets, and Josh Allen hasn't looked good. If anything, I think Cole Beasley is he could sneak into having a good game here. Just a game where Josh Allen's going to have to air it out. So, Cole Beasley I don't hate if you're looking for a desperate flex option. And I'm not really interested in the Buffalo tight ends. Last week with Seattle, if you guys watched the video last week, I had said it. I don't know why I said it, but I felt like it was going to be a DK Metcalf week, and it was. He had 15 targets, threw like 2 or 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards. So, who do I think is going to be this week? I'm feeling Tyler Lockett. It's like you flip a coin, and whatever one it lands on, that guy's going to have a 40, 50-point game. So, yeah, I mean, look, I'm fine with starting both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I feel like at the very worst, maybe they'll get like 5-6 points. At the very best, they guarantee you a win every single week. So, I mean, if you have those guys in your team, just keep throwing them in your lineup. If you don't hit that week with that player, that's fine, because next week there's a good chance they're going to hit. So, in DK Metcalf, every game except the Tyler Lockett blow-up game, he was very, very consistent. So, yeah, so you got to start DK every week. You got to start Tyler Lockett every week. Chris Carson expected to return in this matchup. If for whatever reason Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde are both out yet again, then DJ Dallas is going to find himself into a workhorse role like he did last week. He ended up getting, I think it was 2 touchdowns, 5 catches. So, yeah, I mean, if you're in a tight spot, DJ Dallas is available on your waivers. Chris Carson hasn't, if he's not practicing during the week, if Carlos Hyde isn't practicing during the week, take a shot on DJ Dallas. It's not a bad matchup. Buffalo's run defense is pretty bad. And tight end wise, it's a toss up between Disley and Olsen, and neither of those guys are really doing anything. So, but yeah, I'm very surprised by only 3-point favorites against Buffalo. I'm gonna have to go in on DraftKings and take that 3 points from Seattle. I think that's a pretty easy one. 55-point total. It's a pretty high scoring game, so we'll see how this plays out. Okay, next one here, we got Washington hosting the New York Giants. Washington coming off a bye. Washington also 1-point favorites at home. The Giants looked good last week. I mean, it's kind of tough to say, but they're playing with a lot of heart. They took Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, who were looking like a Super Bowl team, to the last minute. I think it was almost overtime that they took them to. So, Giants are looking a lot better. Sterling Shepard, specifically, has been very, very good ever since returning off IR. He's getting like 7, 8 targets every single game. He's getting a lot of red zone looks and all that. So, I do like Sterling Shepard a lot as a weekly wide receiver 2/wide receiver 3. Running back wise for the Giants, Devontae Freeman, he hasn't practiced, so it could end up being the Wayne Gallman show again. And if it is, then he's worth a desperate flex play. Daniel Jones, also don't hate streaming him in this matchup. And Darius Slayton had a good game last time he was against Washington. Evan Ingram's been pretty consistent, so I'm okay with starting my Giants this week. I'm okay with starting Shepard, Slayton, Ingram. Not so much Tate, who's been complaining with the team. They sent him home, so he's having some internal issues with the team. So I'm probably staying away from Tate, but I'll lean towards Sterling Shepard and company. As far as Washington goes, Kyle Allen, decent streaming option if needed. Antonio Gibson, he's coming off that huge game right before the bye week, and a lot of times we've seen. I've talked about this before. Teams coming off a bye with rookie running backs, sometimes they tend them to just give them more of a nod. We saw that with DeAndre Swift. We saw that with J.K. Dobbins last week. And I'm trying to think if we've seen it with any other situations this year. But, those are two pretty big situations. We could see Antonio Gibson get more of a workhorse role as he gets into his second half schedule. So, I do like Antonio Gibson as a running back 2 flex this week. Wide receiver-wise, Terry McLaurin. Last time he lined up against Bradbury, I think he had like 7 catches for 80 yards or so. So it wasn't a huge touchdown game, but at the same time, Terry did enough to get you by the week, and he's going to do that regardless. Terry's an every week plug and play. Logan Thomas, he's dealing with an ankle injury apparently, but he did practice on a Wednesday, which is a pretty good sign. A lot of times if they don't practice on Wednesday, it's not a big deal. But if you're in a tight spot at tight end, then I think Logan Thomas is a fine play this week. He's been very, very consistent when Kyle Allen has played a full game. He's had over 10 points in each of the games that Kyle Allen has played. So, I'm a fan of Logan Thomas if you're in a tight spot. I do think Washington takes this game. And by the way, I'm not against starting either of these defenses. I think both these defenses could be decent streams. Both these quarterbacks are known to make mistakes, Daniel Jones. So, definitely be worth looking into. Chicago, Tennessee. Tennessee is 6.5-point favorites against Chicago. Tennessee just lost to Cincinnati, which was very shocking. I don't know if you guys heard that. Sorry. But Joe Burrow just led a heroic comeback against Tennessee. It wasn't really a comeback. They were kind of just leading for most of the way. But, as far as Tennessee goes, Ryan Tannehill, I think it's still a decent start for him this week. Derrick Henry, you got to throw him in your lineup every week. He'll still get 15, 20, 25 carries. He'll get you that touchdown. He'll get you 60, 70 yards, maybe 1 or 2 catches. So Derrick Henry will be fine in this matchup. Corey Davis, in every game he's played, he's had at least 11 or 12 points. And Corey Davis is in the middle of a breakout season. He's out-targeted A.J. Brown last week. So, Corey Davis, if you're desperate for a flex play, he's definitely worth a look. A.J. Brown, he's been very consistent since returning from injury. So, starting A.J. Brown. Now, Jonnu Smith is the guy I'm getting so many questions about. Last week, I talked about Jared Cook. I talked about the fact how Chicago has been very leaky against tight ends, and it came true. Jared Cook had a big game. He had 5 catches for 50 or so yards, a touchdown on top of that. So Jared Cook had his big game against Chicago, and now in 8 games, Chicago has allowed a touchdown to a tight end in 6 of those games. 2 of the games that haven't, Evan Ingram still had over 10 points. And Ian Thomas, he's not even real part of the offense. So, Chicago is not pretty, but they're very, very bad at defending the tight ends. So, if Jonnu does not do it this week, then you can comfortably put him on your bench. But if I have Jonnu and I don't have like a Noah Fant or someone like that, or TJ Hawkinson or whatever, I'm starting Noah. I'm starting Jonnu this week. Like, I have a lot of leagues where I have Mike Gesicki and Jonnu Smith, and I think Mike Gesicki could have a little bit of a bounce-back game this week. But at the same time, I'm throwing Jonnu in my lineup, and I'm just going to ride it out one last time. If he disappoints me, then I'll make a change. But for now, I'm rolling out with Jonnu. As far as Chicago goes, I mean, Nick Foles, the tight end secondary has been pretty bad. So if you're desperate for a streaming option, he is there. He could get 2 or 3 touchdowns. David Montgomery, I know right now Chicago's having some COVID issues. They lost 1 or 2 linemen to COVID right now. So we'll see how that situation unfolds. But regardless, it's not a bad matchup for David Montgomery, who's been getting it done as a pass catcher as well. But he looked good on the ground even last week against New Orleans. Allen Robinson, he didn't practice all week, but he did end up still playing. He was out-targeted, I believe, by Anthony Miller. But ultimately, he ended up getting a touchdown. He ended up getting through the week, and this is a great matchup for him. I think this is a blow-up spot for Allen Robinson, if I'm being honest. So I'm a big fan of Allen Robinson this week. I'll be looking for him on DraftKings. Darnell Mooney, if you're desperate, I think this is a game where Nick Foles can have 2 or 3 passing touchdowns, so he could be on the receiving end of one of those. And Anthony Miller, I think, kind of falls back into irrelevancy. Jimmy Graham's been fairly consistent, so if you're desperate for a tight end, I don't hate him either. And yeah, I think Tennessee still wins this game, though. All right, let's get into these second half games over here. Atlanta hosting Denver. 4-point favorites for Atlanta. 50-point total. You know, Atlanta's usually a part of a lot of high-scoring games. Matt Ryan, I think it's a great matchup. Denver's secondary and just defense as a whole has not been good. Running back-wise, Todd Gurley, he was on a short week, so apparently they just wanted to make sure they didn't overwork him on a short week, and he still got double-digit points. So Todd Gurley, if you have him, don't be worried. Just roll him out there. He'll be fine. He's had a mini bye to rest up. So starting Gurley, Julio Jones, he's been money ever since he's been back from injury. So Julio, you got to keep throwing him out there. Calvin Ridley, he's banged up. He's considered day-to-day. He did not practice Wednesday. I haven't seen the update today. I know I keep pulling this out, but I just want to make sure I'm giving you guys accurate information. By the way, I hope you guys voted. I'm not getting into political talks, but I hope you guys voted. He didn't practice Wednesday, and Raheem Morris has said there's been good news with Calvin Ridley's mid-foot sprain. It's not that serious, and he is still labeled day-to-day. Keep an eye on the practice reports. If he does practice today, or if he practices Friday, then he's got a really good chance of playing. And if he doesn't, they could rest him another week and then go into their bye. So either way, keep an eye on the Calvin Ridley situation. If he's playing, I'm going to start him. If he doesn't play, Russell Gage is someone I might consider as a good flex option. But Hayden Hurst is who I'm really going to look for. He's been very consistent, and without Calvin Ridley on the field, he can end up getting some extra targets this way. As far as Denver goes, I think Drew Lock is a fine streamer if you're in a tight spot this week. Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay seems to get it done no matter what the case is. He broke off a big run last week. He looked like the better running back. So, who? Am I still recording? Okay. Sorry, guys. Just making sure everything is topsy-turvy. Having some internet issues. But regardless, Melvin Gordon, I do like him this week. Phillip Lindsay, if you're in a tight spot, he could be a desperation flex or running back too. Wide receiver-wise, Jerry Jeudy had 10 targets last week. That was mainly because Tim Patrick was out. I haven't seen anything on if Tim Patrick is supposed to play this week, but regardless, I do like Jerry Jeudy this week. And I also do like Noah Fant a lot this week. Atlanta has been the worst team at defending tight ends. So Noah Fant coming off a 9-target high volume game, I'm definitely going to roll him out in this matchup. And I think Denver wins. I think they're on a sneaky little run here. The Falcons are going to keep disappointing. Carolina going against Kansas City. So a 10-point spread is pretty crazy. It's definitely understandable. But I don't think Carolina's that bad. Teddy Bridgewater got banged up. He didn't look great, but they get Christian McCaffrey back this week, which is huge. If you're a Mike Davis owner, it probably sucks. He didn't really do much towards the end. But either way, if you're a Christian McCaffrey owner, rejoice. He's returning this week, at least so it seems. He's going to be activated off IR. He's practicing in full, so it's hard to imagine he does anything else but play this week. Teddy Bridgewater, I'm okay with starting him. I'm okay with starting DJ Moore, and Robbie Anderson is an every week starter. So that's that. As far as Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes could be another great game for him, another 4-touchdown game. Between the Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell situation, I'm hoping this week clears some of that up. So last week was the second week with Le'Veon Bell. Target share, the snap percentage, Clyde Edwards played 50%. He didn't really do much on the ground. They just kept airing it out against the Jets. So hopefully this week adds some more clarity to the Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards situation. But if I have Clyde, I'm probably still going to throw him in my lineup this week. And if I have Bell, I might hold back and see what kind of a role he has. Wide receiver-wise, Tyreek Hill, every week start. McCole Hardman coming off a huge game. Desperation flex still, because he has a tendency to disappear. It could be Demarcus Robinson. If Mahomes doesn't throw 4 touchdowns last week, then maybe McCole Hardman isn't even picked up off waivers. So, and then Travis Kelce, as we all know, is Travis Kelce. So, I think Kansas City wins this game. Pretty clear there. All right, we got Indianapolis hosting Baltimore. And this is a pick spread. Interesting. So they don't have a clear favorite. Wow, they don't have Baltimore as a clear favorite in this game? That's pretty crazy. Wow. So 47-point total. Indianapolis has been a part of a lot of low-scoring games, but Phillip Rivers last week turned that around. Baltimore likely without Marlon Humphrey this week, which is huge for Indianapolis, but huge for who? You know what I mean? Like Phillip Rivers, he threw 3 touchdowns last week, I think for the second time this whole entire season. Nyheim Hines, if you're in a tight spot, he could be a desperation flex, but then again, I don't really trust him. Jonathan Taylor, if I have, he's going to be a lower expectation for me. He's going to be someone who, if I have a better option, I'll start him over Jonathan Taylor. But if I don't, then you kind of, roll him out there. Apparently he was nicked up last week, so he's not completely healthy. Jordan Wilkins came in and was the main guy, so we'll have to see how this week shapes out, but I'm probably staying away from Jonathan Taylor. Wide receiver wise, Michael Pittman is going to be his second game back off IR. Didn't see a ton of involvement last week. Maybe that'll change with T.Y. Hilton banged up, but as of right now, every Colts wide receiver is riding the bench. Trey Burton has actually stayed his consistent course, so if you're in a tight spot and need a tight end, Trey Burton could be your guy. As far as Baltimore goes, Lamar Jackson, it's not a great week to start him, but if you have Lamar, you probably don't have another option. Running back wise, it looks like Mark Ingram's going to miss this game, so J.K. Dobbins, I'm not against starting him this week. I'm not. He had over 100 yards last week. He played healthy 60, almost 70% of the snaps. So if I have Dobbins, I'm going to roll him out this game. Pittsburgh's been one of the best defenses against the run in the entire NFL, and J.K. Dobbins ran for over 100 yards against them. So, I'll fire up J.K. Dobbins this week if Mark Ingram is out. But I'm staying away from Marquise Brown, and he's just not getting the targets. Last week it was Willie Snead, who had like 7 catches for over 100 yards, which made absolutely no sense. Mark Andrews, I'm okay with starting him as well. So hopefully he starts to get a little better, and Lamar starts to get his act together as well. But for now, it's not too much to look at for that team. I think Baltimore still ends up winning this game, but I would not be surprised to see Indianapolis with the upset. We got the LA Chargers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I understand having no spread here because I could easily understand either of these teams winning. It's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be more of a shootout. So I do like Justin Herbert a lot this week. He didn't have the best week last week, but I'm expecting more of a bounce back from him. Huge on Justin Herbert this week. Justin Jackson has been the running back to own in this Chargers backfield, so firing up Justin Jackson. Keenan Allen, you got to start him. Mike Williams, if you want a flex play, I don't hate him as a play. And Hunter Henry, hopefully he'll start getting some targets soon, but not a bad matchup for him. As far as the Vegas Raiders go, someone's got to do something here. I think Josh Jacobs is going to have a huge game. He hasn't had a big game in quite some time. Wide receiver wise, Henry Ruggs, it's nothing crazy about Henry Ruggs. He hasn't been consistent. Hunter Renfrow, I'm not interested in. The only Vegas players I'm interested in is Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller, and that's just how it should be. So, I think Chargers win this game. We got Tua Tagovailoa heading into Arizona to take on Kyler Murray. So Kyler Murray, he's like the quarterback one right now. I think he was at least before the bye, but huge fan of Kyler Murray. Chase Edmonds, huge big time start with Kenyon Drake out of the picture. I'm a huge fan of Chase Edmonds this week. Wide receiver wise, DeAndre Hopkins, great play. Christian Kirk, if you're in a tight spot, he's been extremely consistent since coming back from injury, so I don't hate Christian Kirk at all. As for the Miami side, I mentioned it could be a little bit of a bounce back from Mike Gesicki. This is going to be a game where the Dolphins need to throw it. And I think this will be the first game where we kind of get to see what Tua's made of. I'm not sure if this is a primetime game or if this is going to be on the local channels no matter where you are. It should be. I'd much rather watch this game than Pittsburgh and Dallas, I'll tell you that. But regardless, I'm going to be a little cautious about starting Matt Breida. Going to be a little cautious about starting Tua, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki. So if you have the other options, throw them in there. I just want to see what Tua's made of. I want to see what he does in this situation. He didn't really need to throw the ball last week. So I'm okay with holding out. Pittsburgh, Dallas. Oh, and I think Arizona wins that game. But if Tua has a Tua game, maybe he can lead Miami to a victory, an unexpected victory. But we'll see. Dallas hosting Pittsburgh. Oof. So, Dallas right now, 14-point underdogs. Completely understandable. Ben DiNucci didn't really do all that much. Andy Dalton still dealing with injuries, COVID, all that. They're starting Garrett Gilbert, who I think they got off another team's practice squad. So, it's not looking good for Dallas right now. Oh, so Packers are now hopeful that star Aaron Jones plays tonight. And it may end up being a limited role. So Aaron Jones might play tonight, but don't get your hopes up that he'll do all that much. Regardless, can you trust Ezekiel Elliott? I mean, look, I don't want to be the one to tell you to sit Ezekiel Elliott. But I would sit Ezekiel Elliott for Chase Edmonds. That's just where I'm at. I don't trust Ezekiel Elliott anymore. So if you have another option, I don't blame you. As far as these wide receivers go, CD Lamb, you can't trust him. Mari Cooper, is he going to be the guy, or is it going to be Michael Gallup? Okay, long story short, I don't trust any Dallas player at all. But for Pittsburgh, could be a good game for Ben Roethlisberger, could be a very good game for James Conner, could be a very good game for Juju Smith. I like Deontay Johnson this week. He kind of disappeared last week against Marlon Humphrey. But going against Dallas this week, I mean, in every other game, Deontay Johnson has had a huge target share. So I'm expecting him to bounce back a little bit with a much easier matchup. And all of Chase Claypool, Juju Smith, and Deontay Johnson are worth a look. And even Eric Ebron, who had a big game last week. So I like all my Steelers. I don't like any of these Dallas players. And obviously I think Pittsburgh takes this one. Tampa Bay, New Orleans, 50-point total. They're going to beat that. Antonio Brown making his first start. I would consider Antonio Brown a desperate start. He's going to have a limited role, but I think he's going to see a ton of targets when he is on that field. And whenever he's targeted, he does good things. So, um, looking for Antonio Brown as a desperate start. Tom Brady, great start for him. Running back wise, I'm starting Leonard Fournette. I'm not starting Ronald Jones. Can you trust Mike Evans? Can you trust Chris Godwin? I'm going to lower my expectations in Mike Evans. I'll start Chris Godwin. I'm going to lower my expectations for Gronk too, because you just have more, more weapons being added into the mix. As far as the Saints go, you have Michael Thomas, hopefully coming back this week. He's been dealing with a ton of different injuries. He's itching to get back onto the field. So, Drew Brees, I think this is actually a pretty decent start for him with Michael Thomas back. So, Alvin Kamara, Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, I'm okay with starting. Jared Cook if you're in a tight spot, although I think he sees a lot less targets with Michael Thomas back in the lineup. So, and obviously if you have Michael Thomas, you're starting him. Tampa Bay 4-point favorites. I think Tampa Bay runs away with this game, even though they struggled against the Giants last week. The very nice Monday night game, the New England Patriots are going into MetLife to take on the Jets. I almost don't even want to talk about this game. As a Patriots fan, let me put this lightly. As a 22-year-old Patriots fan, I have no recollection of a bad New England Patriots team. So, this is a very tough year for me in many aspects. I might even take the Jets to cover 7.5 point spread. I don't know. The Patriots have just been the definition of bad. If they can't win this game, they just can't win anything. So, as far as the Jets go, gosh, I don't like Darnold. I don't like LaMichael Pirine. I like Jamison Crowder if he's active. As far as New England goes, Cam, sure. I mean, he can get the rushing touchdowns. He can get the rushing work. Damian Harris on the ground. He had over 100 yards last week. He still played like less than 30% of the snaps. But I do really, really like Damian Harris this week. Wide receiver wise, N'Keal Harry might play. Julian Edelman's on IR. Jacoby Myers had 10 targets last week. So if N'Keal Harry is out, then I think Jacoby Myers becomes a desperation flex play. And you can't really trust any of these tight ends. Can't trust Herndon. Can't trust Izzo. So yeah, that's going to wrap up this Week 9 review. Hope my video is okay. Seems like my computer is being a little slow today, which is why I had to check it earlier. But regardless, thank you guys for hanging out. Again, this is teamrankings.com if you guys want to check out all these odds and everything. So these guys are great. So they even have a fantasy tab. Maybe we'll have to look at that at a later point. But thank you guys for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.